clarity about the city's position regarding the Roof Depot site and the purchase agreement with East Phillips Neighborhood Institute, or EPNI. As you know, the city entered into a purchase agreement with EPNI in 2023 for $11.4 million. The agreement considers three sources towards this purchase. $2 million from the state of Minnesota, which was secured in 2023, $3.7 million from EPNI, a source that the city has recognized is in place, and the remaining coming from a $5.7 million pledge from the Minnesota legislature. The agreement we have with EPNI remains in place, and the closing deadline is Monday with an additional 60-day cure period, so that pushes out the deadline to November 15th. Unfortunately, after 2 years, the legislature failed to authorize the pledge to $5.7 million towards the purchase, and EPNI has recently proposed a reduced purchase price of $10.2 million. Today, we informed EPNI that the city cannot accept the counteroffer, and let me explain why. First, funding. EPNI's counteroffer relies on public funds that are restricted and simply cannot be used for this purchase. Their counteroffer proposal includes the $3.7 million in place from EPNI, $2 million that the state has already secured, plus a 2023 legislatively authorized grant to the city for the new water yard in the amount of $4.5 million. That state taxpayer-funded grant can only be used to reimburse the city for planning costs for the new water yard at a different site away from the Roof Depot and not for the purchase itself. This leaves EPNI $4.5 million short in their counteroffer, or $5.7 million short in the purchase agreement price. Second, stewardship and authority. The city has a legal and ethical obligation to be responsible stewards of public assets. The $11.4 million purchase price was based on a fair assessed value of the property at the time the agreement was reached. We as city staff do not have authority to sell it under the approved price. And third, cost recovery. The city has spent over $19 million in the Roof Depot site. We're going to need to invest a few $1 million more to purchase a new site, plus approximately $20 million to build the new facility at that new site. Selling before the agreed price would further burden the ratepayers, who include Minneapolis residents, businesses, and 8 customer jurisdiction our water system serves, and it reduces the ability for us to recover these costs. So to put it into context, the 2023 deal was a product of a collaboration between the legislators, EPNI, and the city. It was carefully negotiated, and with a total of $15.9 million in funding outlined, which includes $11.4 for the purchase, which I've elaborated on, and the $4.5 million for planning of the new facilities. I also want to acknowledge the history of this site. The Roof Depot has long been tied to the city's plans for a public works facility. Over the years, we have adjusted those plans, we've paused work, we've listened to community, and ultimately negotiated the sale agreement that is now in place. We recognize the importance of this site to the East Phillips community, and we respect the efforts that EPNI has made to pursue their vision, but we also must honor our responsibilities to the Minneapolis residents as a whole and safeguard public funds and follow the terms of the agreement and recover costs that we have already incurred. To be clear, the purchase agreement with EPNI is still in place and in effect. The agreed-to purchase price is $11.4 million, and the final deadline to close is November 15th. If EPNI is unable to close under those current agreements, the city will need to move to a competitive offering process where EPNI will be invited to propose a new offer. The city will continue to work in good faith with EPNI, and we remain hopeful that they will be able to secure the funding needed to complete the purchase under the terms we agreed to in 2023. Thank you for listening to me, and I'll take a few questions.
So does the city have any designs on how to build that water yard there, or is the city committed to selling this and just making it?
The question is, does the city have designs on putting the water yard at the Roof Depot? We do not. We have located another site that is going through the city council process. It's in Northeast.
When did you inform FD about the stance?
The question was, when did we inform FD about the rejection of the counteroffer?
Yeah.
It was this morning.
This morning, okay. And so this this other $4.5 million that they were hoping that could be redirected into this and get a slightly lower price in the agreement, basically that grant, you're saying, is tied specifically for water yard planning purposes, and so in your eyes cannot be redirected.
Yep. The question was, what the $4.5 million that they proposed is restricted to planning of the new facility? Yes, it's restricted to planning of the new facility.
What's the address of the new facility?
We can get that address for you. It's
The East Hennepin?
it's up by the East Maintenance Facility. It's in Northeast. I'll have to get the address for you.
In the event that we get to November 14th, nothing happens, in terms of that process you were discussing about, basically putting this back out, into some form of, I don't know if it'd be an RFP or whatever, but like, what would that process roughly look like if this site were to basically go back on the market more or less?
So the question is, what would happen if EP&I is not able to purchase it by the end of the November 15th cure period? The city has been reviewing the counteroffer and the proposal and the information in that proposal. We would have to go through a public bidding process of some sort. Could be an RFP, could be a sealed bid process. There's a number of processes that we would have to follow. It's usually dictated in state law. The city council has already declared this to be surplus public property, so I'm assuming we'll take more of a bid process.
What will the price on the building be if it's reopened for a public building in the public works?
Yeah, what would the price be is the question for the offering process. That'll go through we'd have to do an evaluation of that while we get into the details of that process. We have not figured that out yet.
Potentially be a lot lower than $11.4 million because the valuation of the building is something closer to $4 million.
Yeah. The question is could the city be recouping less than 11.4? I'm not sure. I don't know for sure what we would get in the bidding process. You're subject to who's going to bid. And I don't know I just don't know the information. We can look into that. That's why it's important for us to try and execute this $11.4 million contract that we have in place.
Well, as Susan mentioned, I think one of the positions that we've heard lately from EPNI is this idea that they got a new sort of assessment through a bank on the property, closer to that $4 million figure that she referenced there. And so I guess, setting up a potential situation where if it were to go back onto the market, it could run into a situation where the city might get less than the current 5.7 that's I guess on the table.
Yeah. The question is, would we get less than 11.4? I think it's important for us to think about the 11.4 offer. Right now, what is being proposed to us is not $11.4 million by EP&I. That has a $5.7 million gap because the legislature did not act on that pledge. Their alternative has a $4.5 million, which is lower than 11.4, and those funds can't be used. So effectively, it's 3.7 plus the $2 million that are in place. It's still far lower than the 11.4 contract agreement.
You know what would happen with the state, that $2 million, let's say if this all goes with, what happens to that money? Do you guys have to return that to the state coffers, or how does that work?
The question is, what happens to the $2 million that the legislature appropriated in 2023? There was a extension of the use of that funding to the end of the biennium, which would end June 30th of 2027. Okay. So we have that much time to complete the deal.
The city was going to meet with EPNI on August 25th. Why was that canceled, or is there any other plans to meet with EPNI about the agreement before the deadline?
Right. The question is, the city was going to meet with EPNI in August. I think that meeting was actually with the mayor, and you'd have to refer to the mayor's office. I think he did send EPNI a rationale of why they didn't meet.
And then do you plan to meet with EPNI before the deadline?
The question is, do we plan to meet with EPNI before the deadline? We'll continue to negotiate with them as we go through this deal. We're hopeful that we're going to see some progress to a closing.
I think we've maybe talked about this before, maybe someone else at CPED, but you mentioned that it's a little over $19 million that the city has sort of spent on this property between the purchase back in 2016 and whatnot. Those costs, where do those costs sort of come from? Is that holding, maintenance? What is that cost?
So the question is, how do we get to the $19.1 million in costs? We can give you an articulated list of those costs. But the source of it is the Minnesota waterfront, the Minneapolis waterfront ratepayers.
Any more questions?
I thought it was just me. All right, thank you so much. If you have any follow-up, let Jess know.